the education piece there is a key word for me, because if I look back at some of the interviews that you've done, you mentioned, I mean, the first thing that comes up is you had your first Ferrari at, I think, 25. So you like cars, you had some property, you were very successful very young, and you managed to build that Nostra company very young as well. And you did this without a college education, which, if you look at technology recruitment or technology hiring nowadays, college education is a very important aspect for a lot of companies in terms of who they hire. And I'd like to get into that with you a little bit. You dropped out after 3 or 4 months from your computer science degree. What happened there, Kevin? What made you make that decision to drop out of the course that early?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, when I was 9, we got a computer in the house, and I think my dad bought it for himself,
Mm,
and probably did a day on it and realized that it was the most boring thing ever. So I gave up on it, and my brother Keith kind of started playing with it a bit, and I did, and we both. It was an Amstrad 30 for those techies that
okay.
might be on the
Yeah.
call, right? So it was an
Classic.
8088 processor, not even a mega RAM, probably 128K RAM or something. But anyway, small machine, and all it had was DOS on it. And
Yeah.
you'd literally be going C colon backslash, and it would show you a list of things, and you'd be very excited because you made it do something.
Yeah.
So I kind of had this interest, and then in 1989 there weren't many schools with computers. In 1990, the school I was in got a computer, and I had obviously was able to do my one trick on my PC,
Mm.
and I became the school wizard at 10 years of age because I could turn it on and off. And then I went to secondary school. They had in Knockbag, they had no computers at the time, or one in the receptionist office, and I would have helped, build out the computer room in the school. And then Liam Lawton, who's a singer and a good friend of mine still, Liam started recording music and helped him get set up with his recording studio. Not very well, I have to say. I can take zero credit for his success. But I kind of had an exposure to it. And then I was the computer guy in the school, and I suppose the career guidance teacher looked at me and said, "Yeah, you need to do something with computers." And so I picked management science, and Trinity was the one I went for. And I went up by 100 points from 350 to 455. I got 450 in the leaving, so
Oh,
missed it by 5 points. Second
okay.
choice was DCU, computer applications, and it just wasn't for me. I went in, and and I thought it was, now to be fair, but I went in and it was coding on day one, and it just wasn't, like, sitting in front of a computer didn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
um, and I didn't realize it until I was there. So I kind of realized at that point that what I'd always enjoyed in secondary school was building them and selling them. And even then, when I was in secondary school, I used to outsource to building them and get somebody to build them for 30 quid, and I'd sell them.
At the
And that,
beginnings of Nostra.
yeah, in theory, yeah, KOL systems, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I kind of did that, and for me, I realized an awful lot about myself in that space of time, and I took a temporary job in a company called Type Tech in January of '09, and then I intended going back to college in September, and and they made me a job offer to stay permanently. And, like,
Okay.
go back to the time, I mean, I was on £11,000 a year. They gave me a pay increase to £22,000 a year. Gave me a Rover 214, which I saw recently was Cahill's car when I breaching GDPR. But I actually found the letter, and a laptop, right? And to a
Yeah.
19-year-old, that was massive.
Oh yeah.
Although I didn't like the Rover, just to point that out. And it used to give me electric shock every time I touched it. But um, so for me, that was, I suppose, a decision where do you go back to college or do you continue to work? And I did several years in Type Tech, and I finished up being their sales manager in 2006. So I did 5 or 6 years. I was an engineer for 6 months, and then I became an installation engineer, and then a mid-level engineer, and then I actually applied for the job of the service manager, and thankfully no one else applied for it, and I got it by default. And then I did that for 2 years, and then I moved into being sales manager, and I really enjoyed the sales piece.
Yeah.
And for me, I understood the technology, so going out and talking to customers was easy. And then I just got to a point where I wanted to do something myself in 06, and I left and actually went into being an estate agent, which perfect timing, right at the end of the property boom.
Yeah.
Did that for a very short space of time. Did a bit of traveling went away for 6 months and came back after a week. And I started Nostra then in September or
Very good.
October, I would have said, of 06. And so for me, lots of people talk about college, right, and the importance of it. And look, in a lot of ways, I feel I missed out on a whole youth experience of enjoying college, and I would encourage everyone to go. But the journey I went on was very different, and it was probably harder in some ways. But I knew I didn't know all the answers, and probably not going to college helped me to understand that I didn't know much going out. So I always really had an appetite to listen to other people and take advice, and I surround myself, and always have, with lots of advisors. And I've done loads of micro courses over the years. And experiencing life is the best way to learn, in my view, from a business perspective. And the advantage it gave me was, at 26, I'd worked for 6 or 7 years. I'd had, a good standard of living. I was able to start up my own company. And there were very unique times. I mean, like, talk about buying a Ferrari. I mean, my Ferrari at the time, I think I paid 30 grand for it. It was a 1984 Mondial 8. So it was a black left-hand drive, black, and the cheapest Ferrari in Ireland, right? And I was delighted with myself.
Yeah.
But all of those things, and the realization that I would have had, your inner happiness doesn't come from cars, houses. It doesn't come from any of that. If you're happy in yourself, it's nice to have all those things. But I was trying to fill a void that nothing was going to fill, and I wasn't a particularly happy person. And when I started my business, even the first couple of years, I wasn't. And then I kind of had a realization of what is important in life, and actually, people, in my opinion, and who you surround yourself with, is actually where we get all our joy and happiness from. And for me, at that point, I really made a decision that I wanted Nostra to be around people, and I heard people I liked. And to me, never would I look at a college degree if I was hiring somebody.